I am making an infernoid deck profile. I played this recently at my locals, although it was admittedly a very bad version of it. But I managed to get second with it, and I figured why not make a deck profile of what I've improved to it. Which I will go ahead and specify now. This version of my infernoid deck is not using 1-for-1 reasoning or monster gate, even though it probably should. But I mainly play this because those versions are only really played in decks that every monster in the main deck is an infernoid, so that the only monsters that can be summoned off of those three is Decatron. Which, really, you can easily put them back in by taking out a couple of monsters, but this is just how I like the deck. So, I've done a bit more testing. I actually like this one a lot better than my previous version. Which, starting off with the monsters, other than Infernoid Decatron, all the Infernoids require you banish other Infernoids from your hand or grave to summon them, while the levels and ranks of all monsters you control do not exceed the level of 8. However, if you have a normal monster, then that monster's level or rank will not contribute to that at all. Which I don't know why you'd have a normal monster while you're playing Infernoid, but oh well. But anyway, Decatron has the effect that when normal summoned, you can send an Infernoid from your deck to the grave to then increase Decatron's level by that monster's level, change this card's name to that monster's name, and it also gains that monster's effect on. So, you know what you do with this is you send either Deviati for a monster negate or Onunku for a spell trap negate. The only downside of this card is that it is very weak, so it is very easy for your opponent to just run it over. Then I play one copy of Infernoid Harmadic. Harmadic has the effect that you only have to banish one Infernoid to summon it. Well, it also has the effect of once per turn you target one monster on the field, destroy it. And then, during your opponent's turn, you can tribute one monster, target card in your opponent's grave, and banish it. Then I play one copy of Infernoid Patrulia. Patrulia is the same summon requirement as Harmadic, except once per turn it can target a spell or trap on the field, destroy it, and then the same DD Crow effect on your opponent's turn. The main thing I don't remember is if the set card is able to be used. Okay, and then both Harmadic and Patrulia both share the effect that they can't attack this turn those effects are used. Then I play one copy of Infernoid Piatti. Piatti should be Sajet, I think it's pronounced, which is the level 6 Infernoid. Even though I believe they have a similar-esque effect. But all the Infernoid monsters from levels 5 to 8 require you to banish 2 Infernoids from hand or grave to summon them, and they can be summoned from hand or grave. And then they're also the DD Crow effect, but it's on either player's turn instead of just your opponent's turn. The Piatti has the effect that when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can send one random card from their hand to the grave. Most of the time, Piatti is going to be removed from play to summon bigger Infernoids. Then I play 3 copies of one of the better Infernoids, and honestly, one of my favorite ones. Cytimus has the effect that if it attacked an opponent's monster, then at the end of the battle phase, you can non-targeting banish one monster your opponent controls, or I think it's a monster. It might be a card. Yeah. Okay, yeah. You can, if it attacks the monster at the end of the battle phase, you can non-targeting banish a card on the field. And then it has the same DD Crow effect, tribute a monster, banish a card from your opponent's grave. Then I play one copy of Infernoid Atondel. Atondel has the effect that if it destroys a monster in battle, it can attack again. It gets a second attack, I should say. And then same DD Crow effect as Cytimus. Then I play 2 copies of Infernoid Deviati. Deviati requires you banish 3 infernoids to summon it, but when summoned, it destroys all spell and trap cards on the field, except for face-up void spells or traps. And then if your opponent activates a monster effect, you contribute 1 monster, negate that effect, and then banish that monster. Then I also play 2 copies of Infernoid Onunku. Onunku has the effect of, again, you have to banish 3 Infernoids to summon it. When it is special summoned, you can destroy all, or I think it's optional. Yeah, you can destroy all other monsters on the field. I feel it would have been better if it just said all non-Infernoids on field. That would probably made it a lot better, but anyway, it's a walking dark hole. That's also a spell trap negate by attributing a monster. Then I play 3 copies of Arima the Wicked Warden. The only purpose of this card in this deck is discard it to add Lair of Darkness from your deck to your hand. Although you could use its other effect, being able to tribute 1 monster, draw a card, and if you tributed a monster that wasn't Arima, you can then add a, what was it? A dark monster with 2,000 or more defense from your deck to your hand, which would be your 2 copies of Darkest Diablos, the Lord of the Lair. This monster has the effect that your opponent can't tribute it with card effects, or your opponent can't tribute it, they can't target it, and then you can only use it one of its 2 effects per turn, and you can only activate 1 of them per turn, which is if a dark monster is tributed, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, which, if you add it off of Arima, you will technically be able to summon Darkest Diablos at the resolution because a monster was tributed off of Arima. And its other effects, you can tribute a dark monster to then have your opponent place 1 card from their hand on either the top or bottom of the deck, which probably won't even matter that much, but it does make them give up a card that might be useful. The main things, though, that you could take out of the deck would be the 2 Darkest Diabloses and Arimas if you want to use spells like 1-for-1 Monster Gate and Reasoning, which I don't care about Reasoning that much, just because once your opponent knows you're playing Infernoid, they're just going to say 1, and you will lose the Decatron you get to. Although it does help to fill your grave. And the other cards you could add in would be like things like Metaverse, so you can activate Lair of Darkness from your deck. The only thing I don't like about Metaverse is that it can be ashed. Speaking of which, moving on to the spells, I play 1 copy of Terraforming, just lets you add a field spell from deck to hand. Wish it were at 3, so mainly for my favorite archetype, which requires a field spell, but luckily with some of their new cards, just add a field spell and summon. Then I play 3 copies of Lair of Darkness. Lair of Darkness makes it so that all monsters on the field become dark. And then once per turn, if you attribute a monster you control to activate a card effect, you contribute 1 monster your opponent controls as if it was yours. And then during the end phase, it has the mandatory effect to summon torment tokens to the turn player's field for every monster that is tributed that turn. Which there's 2 main downsides to this, that it's a mandatory effect, so it will activate in the end phase, and it will still activate even if no monsters were attributed that turn. The only reason I don't like that is because that means the card can easily be Ghost Ogred during the end phase. But not a lot of people are playing Ghost Ogre, so... And then next I play 3 copies of Void Seer. Void Seer just lets you target an Infernoid monster you control, so that's unaffected by your opponent's card effects that turn. And then if an Infernoid monster you control be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead of destroying one of those monsters. So, if you summon a bunch of Infernoids, and then you summon Onunku and activate Onunku's effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard to then save 1 of your Infernoids that would be destroyed. Or if your opponent tries a Dark Hole, you can save your negate that you actually wanted. Or Lightning Storm would be a better option. Anyway, I also play 3 copies of Void Vanishment. Void Vanishment lets you discard a card to add a Void spell trap from your deck to your hand. And then the main effect that people don't really realize is that... the only downside of using its effect to search is that it will make it so that you cannot normal or special summon monsters that turn except infernoids. But the other thing most people don't realize about Void Banishment is that if your infernoid monster battles an opponent's monster, at the end of the damage step, you can banish both monsters. So if you have this and your opponent tries to attack over a Decatron, I don't know why I kept trying to say Deviati. But if your opponent tries to attack over a Decatron while you have Void Banishment, you can banish both Decatron and the monster that battled it, which I think is hilarious. Then I play 3 copies of Void Imagination. Void Imagination has the effect so that all infernoid monsters on the field are level 2 or higher become level 1. However, your infernoid monsters are only able to deal half damage to your opponent. And then Imagination has the effect you can send it to the graveyard to fusion summon an infernoid monster using monsters from your hand or field as material. Or if your opponent has a monster summoned from the extra deck while you do not, then you can also use up to 6 infernoids in your deck as material as well. So if you're going second and your opponent has a monster from the extra deck, you can just activate Imagination, send it, use Onunku, Deviati, and then 4 other infernoids to summon the deck's big boss monster, which honestly is my favorite of the infernoids just by art alone. And then next, I play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Since Lair Darkness is in this deck, almost everything is, or you can use literally anything to fusion summon. This lets you just discard card to fusion summon using monsters from either side of the field as material. And then neither player can activate cards or effects in response. And then to finish off the spells, I play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This lets you send any number of cards from your hand or field to the graveyard. Okay. To then be able to non-targeting negate the effects of monsters your opponent controls or for each card that you sent. And then your opponent can only, and depending on the card you send, your opponent can't respond with that same type of card. So if you activate Droplet and you send a spell and a trap, your opponent can only respond with monster effects. Or if you send a spell, trap, and monster, then your opponent just can't respond at all. I'm currently testing out Forbidden Droplet in this deck instead of Eradicate Epidemic Virus, just because I thought this would be better. And to finish off the deck, I also play 3 copies of Void Feast. This is the reason why Piatti should be Sajet, because this lets you send a Void spell or trap from your hand or face up field to the graveyard, to then be able to special summon up to 3 Infernoid monsters from your deck that's levels equal 8. So normally you summon 2 Decatrons and the level 6, just because you get the most benefit out of doing that. And then that is it for the main deck. Like I said, if you want to play a more Infernoid version of the deck, then just take out Arimas and Darkest Diablos, maybe a Void Seer for 1-for-1 Reasoning, Monster Gate, and then 3 copies of Metaverse. That way you still have your 7 copies of the field spell. Then moving on to the extra deck. There are 3 cards in the extra deck that need to be changed, which I will go over those once I get to them, which won't take too long. So for the extra deck, I play 1 copy of IP Masquerena just so I can summon a Link monster and then be able to make it so it can't be destroyed by card effects. Then I play 3 copies of Doom Virus Dragon. These should be Nightmares, Phoenix, Cerberus, and Unicorn. These are only in here because the version I was playing was trying to combine Lair, Darkness with Infernoids while keeping all the virus cards in the deck, which did not work. So, Nightmare Cerberus, when it's Link Summon, you just discard a card, target special summon monster in your opponent's main monster zone, destroy it. Phoenix lets you just do the same thing, except you target a spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it. And then Unicorn can discard a card, shuffle a target card your opponent controls, and shuffle it back into the deck. And they also play 1 copy of Crusadia Equimax. Equimax is actually a really funny card in this deck, as you are able to summon it to a zone that 2 Infernoids point to. And then Equimax gains the attack of all monsters it points to. However, the monsters it points to cannot declare attacks, as long as you're the one controlling them. However, what you can do with this deck is you can have Equimax attack, and then as long as you have one of the bigger Infernoids in play, you can tribute Equimax, banish cards from your opponent's grave, and now the 2 that could attack before can attack again, or can now attack. And then for the super play targets, I play 2 copies of Pride Plant Draco's Tapelia. This is mainly in here for branded. Then I play 3 copies of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This is mainly just in here because of how much this is my favorite of the Dimension Dragons. And the fact that it's just really easy to make on Super Poly. Just acquiring 2 dark monsters on the field that aren't tokens. Lair Darkness makes everything dark, so we'll figure why not. But it has the effect when it's fusion summoned, it gains the attack of 1 special summon monster your opponent controls until the end of the turn. And then once per turn, it can, I think it targets. So yeah, and then it has a once per turn effect. You can target a level 5 or higher monster your opponent controls. Starving Venom can now use that monster's effects. And then its last effect is if this fusion summon card you control is destroyed, then it destroys all special summon monsters on the field. Then I play 1 copy of Pride Plant Triphiovertum. Triphiovertum just acquires 3 dark monsters on the field. And then the only effect in this deck that matters is that when your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck while you control this fusion summoned card, you can negate the summon of that monster, and if you do, destroy that monster. Which I will go ahead and point out, this cannot negate the summoning of a fusion monster that is summoned by a card effect. It can negate a contact fusion, but not if it's summoned off of a card effect. So if a extra deck monster is summoned because of something that started a chain, Trivium can't negate it, but if opponent just summons a Link monster or Synchro summons a Synchro monster, this can negate the summon. As long as that monster doesn't have the text, the cards or effects cannot be activated when this card is summoned. Then I play 1 copy of Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon. Again, this is just in here for branded, as it is a fusion heavy deck, so a fusion monster acquires a dark fusion monster and a fusion monster. Doesn't seem that bad. And I actually don't remember what this thing does. I just put it in because it's materials. So I trace a Predaplant card. I can distribute 1 monster on either field with a predator counter, and if you do, negate the aggression. Let's see. That's using the card. Okay, so the only real effect this thing has with this deck is that if it's destroyed, you can target a dark monster in your grave and summon it, which probably won't happen. Then I play 3 copies of Infernoid Tiara, or Tiara, whichever you prefer. But Tiara has the effect of, when it's fusion summoned, apply its effects in sequence, depending on the number of different Infernoids used for its fusion summoning, which most of the time will be 6. So you'll have the effect of each player sends 3 cards from their extra deck to the graveyard, and then each player sends the top 3 cards of their deck to the graveyard. But if you manage to use 10 or more Infernoids, then you also get the effects of each player turns up to 3 of their banished cards to the graveyard, and then each player sends their entire hand to the graveyard. Which, again, those last 2 aren't as important as the first 2 are. But the main thing I like about it is just that I just really like the artwork. That's the only reason it's my favorite. But like I said, though, the only changes I'd make to the extra deck as of right now are that the 3 Doom Virus Dragons would be Nightmares, Cerberus, Unicorn, and Phoenix. But that's it for my Infernoid deck profile. If any ideas like new to improve the deck, any ideas decks like to see face each other, or decks like to see be made in the future, feel free to comment down below. Thanks for watching.